Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radical Candor Podcast. I'm Kim Scott.
And I'm Jason Rosoff. And today we're joined by Steven Levy. Steven has been covering Silicon Valley since the days when tech leaders saw themselves as rebels, challenging authority, not bending the knee to it. As Wired's editor-at-large, he's chronicled the evolution from idealistic homebrew computer club to today's billionaire CEO at Mar-a-Lago moment. His recent essays on AI Breaking Bad, the Enshittification trap, and what went wrong in Silicon Valley ask the questions leaders need to hear. How do you maintain your values under pressure? What's the cost of silence? And can an industry that seems to have lost its way find its soul again?
Steven, welcome to Radical Candor.
Great seeing you.
Great to see you. What folks may not know about Steven is that he was one of the early champions of my writing career. I had written a novel about what it was like to work at Google, and Steven read it and wrote a nice article about that unpublished novel. Nobody else published it, but
still not published.
Still not published, but you can buy it. It's called Virtual Love. But this is not an advertisement for Virtual Love. This is really, I feel this great sense of betrayal. And maybe first and foremost, I betrayed myself. And when I read your article, it really spoke to me and expressed a lot of what I felt. So first of all, thank you for writing the article. And maybe you want to explain to folks who haven't read it what your article is about, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Yeah. The headline of the article was, I thought I knew Silicon Valley. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And the thing that first drew me to writing about technology was the exciting, irreverent, transformational nature of it. I started my journalism career, a lot of what I did was like cover the rock music world.
Yeah.
That was exciting to me because when I got into that music, it was changing the world. You know, that was the late 60s, very early 70s. And I thought I was riding something, a wave that was like changing the world. But when I actually started writing about it, it was like the mid 70s, and it wasn't that way anymore. And then in the early 80s, I did a story for Rolling Stone about computer hackers. I had never touched a computer before then.
Yeah.
But talking to those people, it blew my mind. You know, like, these were fascinating people. They, were full of exciting ideas. They were doing something really important, and they were going to change everyone's life.
They were the new musicians.
Exactly. One guy who was covering the tech world who had also been in the other world, and he kept saying, we're on the Led Zeppelin plane. We're on the Led Zeppelin plane. These people, they had counterculture roots. They were doing with their engineering counterculture what music had done, but in a bigger way. Instead of talking to, Jimmy Page, I talked to Steve Jobs. I think that's cooler. And so I rode that through the personal computer revolution, the internet boom. And I always felt the people I was talking to had values that I shared. They were going to do good for the world. And they sold that idea to their employees, and everyone was doing God's work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think even before Trump took office, that began to change as the companies got bigger, as it became the mass product in the world, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to hang it all on Trump. But
no. It was getting worse before him.
Yeah, it was getting more transactional, as someone said.
Yeah.
And then Trump comes along. The first term, I think a lot of the big companies sort of deferred to their employees. They didn't jump on the Trump train wholeheartely.
And you had Sergey Brin going to the airport, like objecting to the Muslim ban.
Exactly. And Google wouldn't do the contract with the Department of Defense, the AI contract, Maven. They sat that one out, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then Biden came along. We could talk about this. And they had a different view of Biden. One thing researching this story that took me aback was I knew that Biden might not have been a favorite of the people in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But everyone hated him in the tech world. I mean, not just the libertarians, it was the liberals who said he's out to get us. He wants to destroy technology. I didn't think that was the case. And even in areas where they were saying, yeah, we need regulation like AI, when they saw an opportunity for someone else to come in and say, I don't want to regulate you at all. You're part of our competition globally. Why hold you back? And they jump for that. And
Yeah.
crypto, we could talk about that. Obviously, they despise the SEC
Yeah.
and, just hate.
Yeah.
And threw hundreds of millions of dollars towards the Trump campaign. And, the crypto people helped him. So now we have Trump, and he is a person who likes to be sucked up to.
Yeah. Have his ring kissed.
And to my surprise, the CEOs of Silicon Valley, the big companies, are elbowing each other to see who can get in front of him to suck up to him the most.
I can't even think of the right word. Disappointing is not it. It's like a punch in the gut to watch this.
I think it's shameful.
Yeah. So many friends of mine have said, it's waking people up at 3 a.m, like making us feel physically ill. And I think that's part of why your article struck such a nerve. It's like, how is this happening?
Yeah, exactly. What happened to Silicon Valley?
I saw the quote that you pasted in, Kim. Why don't you read that? Because I feel like it's prescient.
Yeah. This sums it up. This is from Zadie Smith in an interview, I think, with Ezra Klein a while ago. She said, when the internet came, I was like, Alleluia. Finally, we've got a medium which isn't made by the man or centralized. We're just going to be talking to each other, hanging out with each other peer to peer. It's going to be amazing. That is not the internet we have. That is not what occurred. Like, that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, that last part's kind of an understatement. Look, I was right there talking about how there's no borders in cyberspace, and every person speaks with equal weight.
Yeah.
I think social media was part of that toppling. That it seems weird that something which gives the power to anyone to just type something and it goes around the world. Hundreds of millions of people can read it. But what we didn't count on was those algorithms, and the toxic content gets favored over boring content or sensible content. And it turns out behind the scenes that those places are pulling the levers to make sure horrible stuff gets circulated more.
Yeah. In the article that you talked about Mark Lemley firing Meta as a client. So this is like after we already know it's bad. Not only is it not leveling the playing field, but it's actually like causing harm. So they fire Meta because he sees not only what the platform is doing, but the head of the platform, Zuckerberg, is out there projecting this sort of toxic masculinity, neo-Nazi madness. Very few people, publicly at least, followed his lead. And you wrote, everyone fears repercussions because this administration is vindictive. And I kind of wonder what that says about the moment that we find ourselves in, right? We have this sort of like promise, this vision of like where technology could take us, running hard up against the reality. And it's not just fantasy, right? Like I do think the administration has demonstrated itself to be vindictive. So I'm kind of curious, like, how does that play into your feeling of dislocation from Silicon Valley and maybe what you observed of the leaders that you profiled?
Yeah. Lemley, for listeners who might not know, he's an intellectual property lawyer. He teaches at Stanford. He's a leader in his field. He's worked for a lot of the big companies doing IP law. He always thought it was not a political thing to do. It was part of the law, and he'd argue a case and he could see the value of the other side of the case. And then at a certain point, he said, I'm doing this work for Meta. He said, how can I be working for a place which is being so harmful to the world? And so he fired Meta as his client. And that was very unusual. That's why I wanted to talk to him. He said, well, yeah, I took a stand, but I have tenure here at Stanford. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have clients for my outside work no matter what. And I think, though, that's something that a lot of the people I'm talking about have a similar luxury. Even if they could say, hey, I'm in charge of this corporation, I have responsibility to the shareholders. They don't have a response. They have a responsibility to themselves to look in the mirror as well. So I think of Tim Cook, the person who I actually admire. I've known him for a long time. Tim Cook doesn't like Donald Trump.
I think that's safe to say.
He's never said that publicly, but I think it's pretty clear that Tim is not a MAGA kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's how many years from retirement? Not many. He's a billionaire. He has gone through a lot. His integrity has been intact. So here he is in a position where unless he shows fealty to Trump, unless he bends the knee, Apple will have some consequences. They'll have tariffs. Trump threatened that. First, Apple spent $1 million to get Tim on the dais at the inauguration, right?
Yeah.
He did that. And then Tim doesn't go to something in the Middle East where, Trump wants all the tech people there.
Right.
And then he says, boy, Tim wasn't there. Maybe I should give it a 25% tariff. Well, as a CEO, Tim has to think about that. But as a human being, Tim could say, you know what? I'm going to retire. I don't need to do this. So not only does he not retire, and you could argue he's a steward of Apple, he wants to keep that going. He shows up in the Oval Office with it's kind of like a fatted calf, with this object with a gold base, a solid gold base, and then some
etched glass,
little legend on it, like, Donald Trump, the greatest. And how could you do that, right? It's the most shameful product in Apple's history. And he's sitting there in the Oval Office, he's unboxing the thing, right? Like it's the new Vision Pro or something, lovingly pulling it out. I can't believe that. I mean,
when I saw that, I was like, maybe I'm giving Tim too much credit, but I'm like, what has he been threatened with that he's willing to do that? Because it does seem so, like, I do admire him. It's shocking.
He made a choice. And, personally, I think one day he might second guess that choice.
To go back to your question of what is causing these, what's the point of being a billionaire if you can't say what you believe? Like, if you have less power, not more, which is what it seems like is happening to these.
Well, the ones who say what they believe is Mark Andreessen. And what he believes is that
terrifying.
If you want to regulate AI, you're kind of a murderer. Because if you don't regulate AI, we're going to solve diseases much quicker. So just think of all the people who would be dying because we didn't let AI go as fast as possible to find these magical cures, right? Yeah. And he talks about this thing called the deal. The deal is you're a good person, you give money to charity, you make your billions of dollars, and people love you. People say how great you are. And he's not loved. We hurt his feelings.
He's so sad, yeah. But he also says your sins are forgiven. That's the thing in his deal. He's like, I give some money away and he's admitting that there's something wrong here. Right. Nobody made that deal, except that a lot of people have gotten away with it.
And I think we have to confront the fact that the promises of tech billionaires have led to a series of catastrophes, like the promise of the internet being this great equalizing force for communication, then the promise of social media to bring us all together, to connect us. That's not what has happened. The internet has made it so that the cost of control has gone down. And then for social media, I don't think anybody can honestly argue that it's connecting us. It is very clearly dividing us. And so for someone to try to make the argument that like, hey, just trust me, like if we don't regulate AI, everybody's going to be cured of cancer in 10 years. It strains credulity is understatement. It's the understatement of the century.
I mean, some of the things they're saying about AI, this idea that we're going to have such abundance, we're going to have this kind of a utopian society. And people say, well, what about all the jobs that won't be there? They say, well, we'll have universal basic income. We'll all be living like billionaires. I think Sam Altman said that the best off person now will be no better off than the least well-off person after AI. I mean, what?
Yeah.
What's that about? But even dialing down the hyperbole, you see what's happening now. We're the richest country in the world, and we're denying food stamps to people. So why would they think that even if the bounty they promised from AI came through, that they would distribute that equitably?
Yeah, there's every reason to believe they won't. And yeah, I think, Stephen, like, to go back to your question, what happened when I met you, when I very first met you, and this was probably 2005, something like that. My unofficial title was High Priestess of the Long Tail, right? Do you remember the long tail? Because we all believed that all these little creators were going to be able to survive. The internet was going to be this great source of decentralization. And of course, exactly, it's the opposite. It's, 10 people control the whole thing. And in fact, I think we're moving quickly to a world where we're going to have state-controlled media. Whether it's state-controlled media or 3 people controlling the media, it comes down to, it doesn't even matter whether it's the state or these 3 people. It's bad either way. Like, why do we believe that? Because I did believe in the long tail back then. I did believe it. Like, what was going on?
Well, I think there was a period where it looked like it was unfolding, but when the big companies became the marketplaces and they controlled it for their own means, the level playing field got tilted. I read recently, I think Facebook or Meta supplied this claim that like 7% of the things you see on your feed in Facebook come from people you actually know. Less than 10%. This thing's made by connectivity, right?
Yeah.
And it's a broadcast medium of what they serve to you that they think you're going to react to, whether you're happy about it or not.
Yeah, we're foie gras geese.
Well, Zuckerberg would like that.
Talk a little bit about the age of extraction, because it seems very relevant to everything you wrote about. It was a good explanation of why these platforms got so much power.
Right. I see Tim's book, The Age of Extraction, as a companion piece to Cory Doctorow's book about Enshittification. So basically, this theory is, and you can see it yourself in the apps you use, that these companies start out, they want to serve people.
Yeah,
they want to do the best for their customer, right? Whether it's connecting people on Meta or whether it's Amazon's always going to give you the best deal, make it easy to find what you want. Google is always going to give you the search results you're looking for. It's going to be at the top of the stack.
Yeah.
And then they become kind of monopolies.
Yeah.
They lock you in and they realize they can make more money by not giving you the easiest, best search result, the place to go. They used to take pride. You know this, Kim.
Yeah.
Google is saying, we're great because we want people to leave us right away.
Yeah. Not so much anymore.
No. Now they want to send you to someplace where there's a payoff. On the other end, put in a search result for a hotel and try to figure out which is the hotel's website. And Amazon, you look for something, I want to buy a coffee pot, and they're not going to show you the best, cheapest coffee pot. You might have to scroll down several pages, to find
it's
that.
Faster now to go to Google and search for the coffee pot you want.
Or Chat GPT, give me research mode, right? And it'll kind of think for a while and give you the coffee pot that you used to get right away on Amazon.
Yeah.
All these apps we use are worse than they were before, and they've been enshittified, to use Cory's term. Tim has a societal view. He's really good at finding really interesting stories to illustrate this from history. Under the Biden administration, they got tough. They started suing these big companies, blocking these mergers, and that's what made the people hate Biden. In Silicon Valley. But you look at it, Tim's argument is that we're actually helping competition by doing that.
Yeah.
And just take one thing that happened under the Biden administration. There was a company called Figma. You know that company?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Great company, which came across with this collaborative way to do design. They were, whipping Adobe's ass.
Yeah.
And Adobe wants to buy them.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lena Khan said, no. I'm going to fight you. So they didn't merge, right? And then 2 years later, Figma goes public. Bang.
Yeah.
Huge valuation, right?
Yeah.
So there's a case where, hey, you know what? Things are better off because that merger didn't happen.
Yeah. The creators are better off. Everybody except Adobe is better off.
Right. Adobe has to lift this game now.
Yeah.
And they can't be enshittified.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe it's better for Adobe in the end. So let me ask you a question. If we go back to like your article, and another theme that you had in the article was about the CEO's values. When I very first met Mark Zuckerberg, I was working at Google and I was interested in social media. It's probably, again, around the time I met you, 2005. He gave me his business card, which still said, "I'm the CEO, biatch." And I just remember thinking, this is an evil.
Do you still have it?
No, I was so disgusted, I threw it away. I wish I had kept it. But I would say his values are not mine, as articulated by his business card. But I was talking to a couple of friends. We both were talking about the fact that we're angry at our former employers. We're disappointed by our former employers. And that I think there's a big difference, though, between the companies where the CEOs started out bad and the companies where maybe they got corrupted by money. Did we just drink the Kool-Aid? Does it matter what the CEO's values are?
Well, yeah, especially in a company like Meta, where the CEO is in such control of the company. He always has been.
Yeah.
But I mean, I spent a lot of time with Mark Zuckerberg when I was writing a book about Facebook, as it was called then. And
a great book, by the way.
Well, thank you. I felt that I was watching someone grappling to some degree with some of the things that the company was doing. Mm-hmm. He was thinking a lot about free speech. He did this year-long journey. He wanted to go to all 50 states. And someone who was very close to him told me, no doubt nor mind, he was running for president. Not like officially, but setting it up, right? But I felt he had a genuine concern for immigrants. Mm-hmm. He funded a school in East Palo Alto. I didn't think that was entirely bullshit. But now
he shut it down.
Now it's like he shut the school down. He, embraced someone who was the exact opposite view of immigration. He doesn't say, well, I kind of like Donald Trump, but we disagree on this. He's not saying that. You don't hear him say that. Yeah. And he's espousing this kind of masculinity stuff. I think what happened with him is, he's always been very ambitious and very aggressive in doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Trump gave him license to say, I don't care about these people who were trying to hector me about my values. And he even said, I'm done apologizing.
Yeah.
I'm done, even if things happen in Meta where he should apologize for, that's not him anymore.
Yeah.
So I think he has changed.
You think he's gotten worse? He wasn't as bad as maybe I was being too harsh on the business card.
Well, I don't know. He was always sort of the least liked CEO in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
When I people would tell me, not always on the record, most off the record, that I don't like this guy. So maybe it's no surprise that he's behaving that way now. But then you take someone like Jeff Bezos, another guy who espoused great values. I'd spent a lot of time talking to him. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have predicted that he would become this sort of mega socialite. What happened to him?
I think one thing that's really difficult is to figure out, because I think one of the things that makes it feel so dislocating is when the effect of people capitulating is that everybody's afraid to speak up, because it's not just like the individual contributor at Meta isn't afraid of Donald Trump, but they are sort of afraid of putting a toe out of line in a company that seems to be very happy to support his latest policy. What advice might you have for someone who finds themselves in a situation where they're like working at a company where either they disagree vehemently with the position that the company is taking, maybe they don't feel super empowered to find another role someplace else at the moment, but how can they find community, or how can they find at minimum commiseration? Is there a counterculture growing in Silicon Valley?
I talked to someone who's executive at Meta, and they were saying, it used to be we would discuss all sorts of things. Now it's more like it was sort of before the revolution, right? You leave your politics at home. Mm-hmm. If you're not comfortable with it, you leave. I just did a big interview with the head of Palantir. That's a company where well, they take pretty strong stances. They unabashedly support ICE. They were supporting the Israeli military. And their communications person said just last week at a conference or a couple weeks ago, saying, well, we don't fire people for having different views, but it's self-selecting, that people who can't take it, that they'll leave.
Yeah.
I think if you're not in a position financially where you can do that, what you would try to do is try to express your values from your work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm building a good product. Now, of course, if the product you're building is a horrible product, which is going to
doing evil things,
make kids commit suicide, then you really should, figure out what it takes to live it yourself, how tough it is to get another job. But a lot of us sometimes wind up working for places that people don't share our values, but the work we do, we're proud of. Take the Washington Post, run by the fellow we were talking about, Jeff Bezos. For the first few years, he let the editorial side do whatever they wanted. His editor, Marty Barron, wrote a book saying what a great guy he was. He never bothered to interfere. So then the election in 2024, they were about to endorse Kamala Harris. He said, we're not doing endorsements. Then he says, I'm going to change the editorial page. I want to make it about free markets, which is what the Wall Street Journal page, wants to be, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people cancel their subscription. I have friends who work there who do work they're proud of. There's still great stuff in the Washington Post. And they were thinking please don't unsubscribe. We're still here,
It's really hard to know right now what to do. I have a bunch of friends people who work at Apple. There's plenty of people who are shocked that Apple took the app out of the App Store that allowed people to warn each other when ICE was coming to their neighborhood. And then Google took it down too, but it didn't get as much press. I don't know what the hell I would do if I were still working there, but I have some thoughts.
A lot of people go to startups now. OpenAI was started because Elon Musk and Sam Altman didn't want AI in the hands of powerful companies.
Yeah. And then they became powerful.
It's not a good situation when your own values are in conflict with the organization that you're contributing your labor to.
I think two things occur to me. One is there was a period of time where the disruption that was happening in Silicon Valley was in the direction of disrupting the current power structure and redistributing that power to many people. It's very easy to satisfy the criteria that you were describing, Steven, which is like, I may not agree with everybody or exactly what we think about this particular issue, but I actually think we're moving the world in the right direction. And so there's a lot I can be really proud of. But I think as that shifts, one of the things that Silicon Valley is not used to is having to exercise power in other domains. One of the things that was surprising to me was how much more sort of obvious and prevalent local politics was on the East Coast as compared to what it was like when I first moved to Silicon Valley 15 years ago. I think there's a shift. Like people are starting to recognize maybe there's other domains in which I need to exercise some of these beliefs and use my agency and my power, my labor in order to like help move the conversation forward. So I'd be thinking about that too, is like, maybe I can't express all of this through work, but maybe I can get involved in volunteering for organizations or being part of the political process. And that's just not something I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley have had to think about very deeply. But that does seem like an option as well. If you don't think you're like harming people, you could stay in a place for quite a while that you disagree with if it gave you the flexibility to actually contribute in some other way to what you thought should happen in the world.
That's a good point. And again, I've underlined it. The work that you're doing, you feel is good for the world. That mitigates a lot.
Yeah, those journalists at the Washington Post should keep writing.
I've seen people make the same argument about like the CDC and stuff. There's a bunch of people who are writing, I think, quite eloquently about like, please don't quit. Please don't resign. The problem is you either won't be backfilled, which will still shift the balance of power to people we disagree with more strongly than you, or you will be backfilled with people who are willing to toe the line.
Yeah. Maybe a better way to ask the question is, what should I do now? I started my career in Moscow in 1990, and I thought it was about, the revolution and dismantling totalitarian regime and all of this. This was 1990. It was the Soviet Union. And instead, what I was supporting at the time, without really quite realizing what I was doing were these neoliberal policies that the Clinton administration was putting forward. And I didn't get it. Okay, I was 20. I can blame myself for not getting it. So then I go to the Federal Communications Commission in 1996 after business school. And it's the 1996 Telecom Act, there's Section 230, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I thought this was about the telecommunications revolution, power to the people, but instead, like, we deregulated tech forever. I thought I had these progressive values, and yet what we were doing was, again, super neoliberal. And then I took a job at Google and read the letter that Larry and Sergey wrote before the company went public. And it was all about, we're going to reward and treat people well. We're going to make the world a better place, and then the rest is history. I feel like I made a series of big miscalculations where I thought I was supporting these sort of progressive forces. And in fact, I was doing the opposite. How do I atone for these sins? What should Kim Scott do? I want advice. I mean, I wrote an article, I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, which I love doing, but it does not feel like a sufficient atonement.
Well, I mean, look, you're helping people go through situations like this. You're doing something. I mean,
yeah,
you're
feels
still
like
not,
too little, too late, but
we do what we can, right? You're not still working for Google.
No, I'm not. In fact, I don't even have any stock.
I don't think that everyone who works for Google is a criminal or a bad person, but
no. In fact, I still
certainly not.
love Google.
I think, as Jason said, you be active otherwise. This is part of a larger picture of what's happening in the country and in the world, where concentrated power is being used against people. So there's a political path to take. You say, you feel, how did I miss that? Well, it wasn't all there back then.
It wasn't so clear.
Yeah. And, when I was talking to those guys in 1999, they were a couple of goofballs in an office, right?
Yeah. It was fun.
But there were no super yachts.
There was a real commitment to doing the right thing, being good people. And I believe that commitment is still there, but it is very unsettling that those who used to be so vocal about it are being so silent now.
What happens to anyone if they're worth $100 billion?
It's not good, for sure.
If my income had built up over the last couple decades to $100 billion, God knows what a creep I'd be,
Yeah, me too. I mean, money corrupts, power corrupts, and I'm certainly not going to stand here and say I'm incorruptible. I think we need to change the system. And in fact, I think this is a good summary, a good place to almost end, which is, I think, for example, at Google, there was this, we're going to systematically strip power away from everyone at the company. Nobody is going to have unilateral hiring, decision-making power, firing. It was a system of checks and balances. And it applied to all of the usual sources of power that any leader at the company, including Larry, Sergey, and Eric, had, with one exception. It did not apply to money. I think that money corrupted Silicon Valley. That's what happened. Too much money in too few hands.
Yeah, money and power too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how we get it back, I don't know. I don't see the AI changing that equation.
And it's not going to be a billionaire who's going to come in and save us. It's going to have to be collective action, I really do believe. So I'm signing up to be I hope there's a leader I can follow. I'm looking for them. Well, Steven, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone listening, you can read Steven's work weekly on Wired. And of course, check out his books at stevenlevy.com. It's all linked in the show notes. You can also join the Radical Candor community to get real-time peer support and solidarity. Go to radicalcandor.com/community to sign up.
And if you do want to find the show notes, head to radicalcandor.com/podcast. If you're a visual person, you'll be able to see a video version of this podcast on YouTube and Spotify. And last but not least, praise in public and criticize in private. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and follow us on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. If you have feedback or questions for us, you can always email them to us at any time, podcast@radicalcandor.com. We'll see y'all soon.
Thank you so much, Steven.
Bye-bye.
Keep speaking truth to power.
Thank you.
Take care. The Radical Candor Podcast is based on the book Radical Candor, Be a Kick-Ass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity by me, Kim Scott. Episodes are produced with thanks to Podium Production Company with script editing by Amy Sandler. The show features Radical Candor co-founders Jason Rosoff and me. It's hosted by Amy Sandler. Nick Kursamy is our audio engineer. The Radical Candor podcasting music was composed by Cliff Goldbacher. Follow us on LinkedIn, Radical Candor, the company, and visit us at radicalcandor.com.